There are tiny frustrations in your life that you probably stopped noticing years ago. A wet umbrella dripping across the floor, a package arriving when you're not home, standing at a bus stop in freezing weather, trying to figure out whether a restroom stall is occupied. None of these problems are serious enough to ruin your day, but together, they create something we rarely think about: friction. Tiny moments that waste time, create stress, or make everyday life slightly more difficult than it needs to be. And Japan has developed an interesting habit. Instead of asking people to simply tolerate these inconveniences, they often redesign the environment around them. Once you start noticing this, Japanese everyday life begins to look very different. Here are 12 examples, and more importantly, the surprisingly simple philosophy connecting all of them. Let's begin somewhere surprisingly ordinary. The restroom. Public restrooms can create a strange kind of anxiety. You walk toward a row of stalls. Is this one occupied? Should you knock? Should you try the handle? Then there's another uncomfortable reality nobody likes discussing: privacy. For years, some people would flush the toilet simply to cover embarrassing sounds. Think about that. Clean water was being wasted because people felt uncomfortable. Japan's response wasn't to tell people to change their behavior. It was to redesign the experience. Some Japanese toilets include a privacy sound function that creates the sound of running or flushing water without requiring an actual flush. One button. Less embarrassment, less unnecessary water use, and in some modern facilities, occupancy indicators can make it immediately obvious which stalls are available. The interesting part isn't the technology, it's the question behind it. Why force people to adapt when the environment can adapt instead? You'll see that question again and again. Now imagine a rainy morning. You arrive at a department store carrying a soaking wet umbrella. Normally, you bring the rain inside with you. Water drips onto the floor, your clothes get wet, someone has to clean everything afterward, and slippery floors become a safety problem. In Japan, entrances to some buildings offer simple solutions for exactly this moment. Umbrella covers and other umbrella drying systems allow visitors to contain the water before walking farther inside. It takes only seconds. But notice what just happened. A problem was solved at the exact place where the problem begins. Not 20 meters later with a mop. Not with another warning sign telling you to be careful. The system tries to prevent the mess first. That's a very different way of thinking. Now consider another problem. It's late. You've missed your train. You need somewhere to sleep. But you don't necessarily need a desk, a sofa, a giant television, or a large hotel room. You need one thing: rest. That idea helped make capsule hotels one of Japan's most recognizable forms of accommodation. Instead of asking how much can fit inside a hotel room, the concept asks a much simpler question. What does this person actually need tonight? A sleeping space, a light, power, privacy, a few essentials, and very little else. It's an interesting lesson because modern life constantly encourages us to add more space, more features, more possessions. But Japanese design often asks the opposite question: what can we remove without removing what matters? Sometimes better doesn't mean more. Sometimes better means enough. There is another resource modern life wastes constantly: attention. When people become exhausted at work, many cultures have a predictable response. Another coffee, another energy drink. Push through, keep going. But human concentration doesn't work indefinitely. Japan is also known for a cultural relationship with brief periods of rest that can sometimes look unusual to outsiders. Today, dedicated rest spaces and nap-oriented products also reflect a simple idea. Sometimes productivity doesn't improve by working longer. It improves by recovering. Imagine closing your eyes for 20 minutes, then returning with clearer attention instead of spending 2 hours pretending you're still productive. The deeper lesson isn't that everyone should sleep at work. It's something much simpler. Good systems acknowledge human limits. They don't pretend those limits don't exist. Waiting is another form of invisible friction. 5 minutes doesn't sound long. Until you're standing outside in winter, or summer, or heavy rain. Some Japanese waiting spaces and transit facilities use thoughtful shelter, seating, and environmental design to make those minutes more comfortable. Again, the philosophy is subtle. The bus may not arrive any faster. The train may still take the same amount of time, but the experience of waiting can be improved. That's important because efficiency isn't always about making something faster. Sometimes it's about making unavoidable time feel less unpleasant. And this is where Japanese design becomes especially interesting. Most systems try to change people through instructions. Recycle more, waste less, be responsible. But instructions require motivation, and motivation disappears quickly when something is inconvenient. A smarter approach is to make the desired behavior easier or more rewarding. Bottle return and recycling systems can do exactly that. Return a container. The system recognizes it. And depending on the program, you may receive points, credit, or another incentive. Suddenly, recycling isn't just an abstract responsibility. There's immediate feedback. And this reveals an important principle. If you want better behavior, improve the system surrounding the behavior. Don't depend entirely on willpower. Online shopping created another strange little problem. You order something to make your life easier. Then the delivery makes your life harder. You have to be home. You miss the courier. The courier returns. You rearrange your schedule. Japan's delivery infrastructure offers a much more flexible solution through parcel lockers and other unattended delivery options. The package arrives, it's stored securely. You retrieve it when you're available. Now, think about the difference. Traditional delivery asks you to organize your day around the delivery. A locker-based system asks when it's convenient for you. It's a tiny reversal, but that reversal is at the heart of good everyday design. Technology should adapt to human life. Human life shouldn't constantly adapt to technology. But not every clever Japanese system involves advanced technology. Sometimes the most impressive technology is simply trust. Travel through rural parts of Japan, and you may encounter small, unmanned produce stands, vegetables, fruit, eggs, a price, and a place to leave payment. No cashier, no complicated checkout, no employee standing beside you. The system depends heavily on social trust and local norms, and that creates something technology often struggles to create: simplicity. When people can trust one another, fewer layers of control are necessary, fewer barriers, fewer procedures, less friction. That's a powerful reminder. A convenient society isn't created only by better machines. It's also created by the behavior people expect from one another. Now let's move from convenience to something more playful. Walk through Japanese shops and you'll notice familiar products appearing in unfamiliar versions. One famous example is Kit Kat. Japan became known for an enormous variety of regional and seasonal flavors: matcha, sweet potato, sakura-inspired varieties, and many others over the years. What makes this interesting isn't simply the number of flavors, it's what happens to the product. A chocolate bar stops being just a chocolate bar. It becomes a souvenir, a regional experience, a small gift, something to discover. Japanese consumer culture often demonstrates that usefulness isn't the only form of value. Emotion matters. Presentation matters. Context matters. Even an ordinary object can feel special when someone thinks carefully about the experience surrounding it. So far, we've looked at small inconveniences, but the same mindset becomes much more serious when nature is involved. Japan faces earthquakes, typhoons, heavy rainfall, and flooding. And near Tokyo lies one of the most dramatic examples of infrastructure designed for extreme water events. A massive underground flood control system. Huge underground spaces help manage floodwater and redirect it towards safer waterways. Standing inside parts of the structure can feel less like entering infrastructure and more like entering an underground temple. But its appearance isn't the important part. Its purpose is. It exists because disaster preparation begins before disaster happens. That's a principle that applies far beyond flood control. Most people solve problems after they arrive. Resilient systems ask a different question. What will we wish we had prepared before this happens? Earthquakes create another unusual design challenge. Our instinct is usually to make things rigid, strong, immovable. But earthquakes move the ground itself. So, Japanese earthquake preparation includes methods for securing furniture, reducing falling hazards, and designing structures and household environments around movement. The goal isn't always to overpower nature. Often, it's to manage how objects respond to it. That idea is surprisingly philosophical. When something powerful cannot be stopped, resilience may come from adapting rather than resisting. And that brings us to the final example, because the most important conveniences are sometimes the ones you hope you never need. Imagine an earthquake or major storm has disrupted electricity and transportation. Stores may be closed, cooking may be difficult. Suddenly, the most ordinary question becomes extremely important. What are you going to eat? Japan has developed a large culture around emergency preparedness, including long-life foods intended to be stored for disasters. One particularly memorable example is canned bread. Yes, bread inside a can. Certain products are designed to remain edible for years, while requiring little or no preparation when they're finally needed. It's easy to look at something like canned bread and think it's strange, until the electricity disappears. Then strange becomes practical. And that's what makes this final example different from everything else we've seen. Convenience usually makes a normal day easier. Preparedness makes an abnormal day survivable. And when you look at all these examples together, something becomes clear. The most interesting thing isn't the umbrella system. It isn't the capsule hotel. It isn't the delivery locker. And it isn't even the enormous flood control infrastructure beneath the Tokyo area. It's the thinking behind them. Again and again, the question seems to be, where does everyday friction happen? And then, can we remove it before people even have to think about it? A wet umbrella becomes a problem at the entrance. Solve it at the entrance. A missed delivery happens because two schedules don't match. Remove the need for those schedules to match. People become tired because humans have limits. Design around those limits. Disasters become catastrophic when preparation begins too late. Prepare while everything is still normal. None of these ideas alone will transform your life. But together, they reveal something worth borrowing from Japanese living. Pay attention to small inconveniences, because when you improve enough small things, daily life begins to feel very different. And perhaps that's the real lesson. A better life doesn't always require a dramatic change. Sometimes it begins by noticing one small problem you've accepted for far too long. If you enjoy discovering the small ideas, habits, and design choices that make Japanese everyday life different, subscribe to Inside Japanese Living, because sometimes the most useful lessons from Japan are hiding in the most ordinary places.